Welcome, everybody. This is Daniel Harner, as everyone knows comes in. My name is Bina Bendale. I have been blessed to have this time with him. And actually, we were just talking prior to I hit record, we were talking about balance. And I just want us to go straight back into our conversation as if this is not even being recorded. What were you talking about when we were just talking about the balance piece of it? Because it's a lot of times balance. What does balance mean for you?
Yeah, everybody has their calibration of what balance means.
Right.
For me, that's been a huge question mark my whole life. What does that mean to me? Like balance means like finding the right proportion between the paradoxes of life,
Mhm.
between inside and outside, extroverted, introverted, up and down, behind and back, like all those polarities that we are confronted with in daily life. They come to us. And in the beginning, it felt like a confrontation of some kind, and I couldn't dance with the polarities. And it
Mm.
took me a long time to find the balance between the polarities. And I'm not saying I have arrived anywhere, but for me, it's fun now. Like for me, it's fun now to be thrown off balance or pushed or stretched in a way because I know how to find my center again when that happens. It's like a workout for me.
So when people find the word balance, for me, I find the word harmony. Does
Mhm.
harmony resonate with you? Because for me, like there's like
Yeah.
when I talk about balance, it's that same push-pull event that we talk about. But it's
Yeah.
also just really for me, when I hear balance, I hear harmony in the words
Mhm.
because it's the subtleness of the tunes or the subtleness of the high pitches. You have the highs, you have lows, and
Yeah.
then everything in between.
Yeah, for sure. For me, it's music. There's a lot of different instruments. There might be an orchestra, but how well are all these different parts and pieces of the orchestra working together? Is it creating harmony? Is it creating coherence? Is it creating peace? Is it creating beauty? Is it creating love? So for me, that's a beautiful metaphor, right? Because we're all like an instrument. Like you're an
Mhm.
instrument, I'm an instrument, and then there's a greater instrument.
Yeah,
Is the collective consciousness of who we are all together on
right.
invisible, right? And for me, it's all about making the most beautiful music that I am capable of being, right? And that means I have to put myself into service with God to tune myself into the greater frequency of everything that's out there so it can flow through me. And hopefully the music is beautiful. And I've worked my whole life to make the music as beautiful as possible. And hopefully it sounds like harmony, and hopefully it sounds like peace, and hopefully it sounds like love.
But that's the best part is that it's your music. And as long as it's beautiful for you, it's beautiful to everyone else.
No, I've always put my time and attention into refining my own craft, being the number one thing that I'm most passionate about, always being that working on the music be as beautiful as possible. Okay, where is it? Where is it not? Where is it a little off? Where is it? Where is there no balance? So it's like a deep listening within every day. It's been my spiritual practice really for the last 18 years to just
Mm,
use the imbalances that I experience in myself within in my own heart and in my own mind and my own body and in life around me, and then trying to recalibrate and say what's right for me, what's the most loving thing for me, what's the most beautiful thing for me. Almost like a bird flying in the wind, and the wind kind of changes, right? And the bird kind of recalibrates its wings to the wind,
yeah.
so we can fly towards the destination where it needs
Yeah.
to go. And that's what the spiritual expansion feels like inside of me, is just to always to listen, to feel, and then to recalibrate and to expand. Because for me, expansion wasn't possible without finding balance and finding harmony within myself. Yeah. So if I forced something, it would create too big of a stretch or create too big of a discord within me, then the music wouldn't sound that good. And I don't. And sometimes when we are in stress or in fear or in anxiety, sometimes we try to push through it and we try to manhandle it and things like that. And sometimes that works, but sometimes that doesn't work so well. So
Yeah.
it's an art, and a science, and both of those together can create a harmony as well. You
Yeah.
know?
The bird analogy is beautiful because a lot of times it's true. If the bird is off centered, if they're not calibrating or comes in, they're just going to fall right there. They're not going to be flying much longer.
Yeah, no, but pretty much that's a spiritual survival mechanism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's driven in them with instinct on how to fly, right?
Hmm.
Like a lot of humans, we want to fly, we want to do this. And in reality, you can, if you're in the spiritual world, like you can fly to whatever degree you want to do.
Yeah.
And it's that expansion piece that is so beautiful when you said that, when you open up your wings and just fly. It's
Hmm.
expanding your energy across whatever you're being, whatever feeling, whatever love, purity, whatever it is that you're calling to do.
Hmm.
Um, the universe will really does respond back. And it's a great metaphor to hear for other people that spiritual awakenings don't just always occur. Sometimes it's just brought to us by the analogy of a bird flying and
Mhm.
just expanding your wings and trusting yourself.
You have to make yourself into a vessel, a receptive vessel where the divine can pour itself into.
Mm,
I see myself like this. Like, it's like I make myself a beautiful vessel. So the wind or the water or the wine or the Holy Spirit or the consciousness or life or the music can flow through, right? So it's really
yeah.
about that, becoming a perfect instrument.
Mm, that's
Hmm.
beautiful that comes in. And we were talking about Arizona and how we did not have the chance to give each other a hug. I think at the end of that day, I was very tired.
Hmm.
I wanted to go home or the home that I was living at. And it's things, it's just those vessels that come through and really it's sometimes like people also have to know when enough is enough and it's time to also be okay with leaving. Now,
Hmm.
when I heard you were there, I was like, "Dang it, I wanted to give him a hug." But then I also know that there's a lot of people that came up to you that was wanting to give you a hug at the same time. It was a love explosion. I saw. Trust me, everyone, "Oh, Daniel was here." I was like, "Dang it." And then like, "Should we turn around?" I'm like, "No." Not that I don't love him. I don't want to he might not be there when we get back. Then
Mm.
I'm gonna be more disappointed.
But now we have the chance to connect online because we didn't meet in person. It's back to balance.
It always goes back. What's the one thing you can if you had one advice to give just random person if they came to you and you're like, "This is one thing I wish I learned," what would that be?
First of all, when I was 24 or let's say 17, I always wanted to have somebody in my life that I am right now. So I had
Mm,
to create myself into the person that I was missing when I was young. When I was 17, when I was 24, I had so many questions. So my one advice to my younger me or to anybody in the audience would be to not doubt yourself too much, to be
mhm,
patient, to know that there's a greater plan unfolding for you and you will find or what you are aware of inside that you really want or what you feel like is capable of coming into existence will happen for you if you just stay on the path long enough. For everybody, it's a little different. Some people may reach their full potential in 3 years. Some people may take 17 years. Some people may take a whole lifetime to fulfill it, and they
yeah,
may never see the success or the happiness of other people in their lifetime. Like some Van Goghs or some amazing artists, they were never celebrated while they were still alive. $100 million, but at the time they were considered psychotic or mad. So yes, so for me, I had to learn a lot of patience on my path. Like I had to sit with severe degrees of discomfort and not knowing and questioning myself over and over again. And it built me into the person that I am now because I didn't have for a very long time what I wanted really badly, which was freedom, which was love, which was peace. I grew up with a mind that's very powerful, but also a bully, always pushing me to find my own edge. So
mm,
it's almost like getting in a boxing ring every day with your opponent. You study him and look at his movement, and like, this is not easy, but something really good is going to come out of this. It's not just adversity from without, it's adversity from within. So that's what really motivated me to become a psychologist and a psychotherapist, a healer or a mentor, is just confrontation with something inside of me or a place where suffering and pain occurs that you try to desperately heal or find a medicine for.
mhm.
Yeah.
So who are you today?
Today, I'm really the product of a lifelong quest of inquiry into truth and love. So I would love to say that I'm now the closest version of truth, beauty, and love that I've ever been. And those are
Mm,
the three qualities I'm most committed to. Truth being that aspect of the mind that like really wanting to know what is real. Love being really that quality of feeling that makes us feel expanded and surrendered and devoted. And beauty really that inspiring sensual piece of creation in nature or through architecture or cathedrals or art that we get to experience and honor in this lifetime while we're still on this planet. So I would describe myself at this point as an embodiment of truth, beauty, and love.
that's beautiful. Embodiment of truth, beauty, and love.
Yep.
Mm. It's like music to my ears because it's like I love when people give themselves an analogy that is just so true to who they are now. And
Mm,
a lot of the times when I ask this question, and I don't ask it very often,
yeah.
it's people don't know how to answer it. They
Right.
give me these like long, exaggerate, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm a mom, I'm a sister, I'm a brother, all these different things. But the truth behind the beauty
So we
and
describe it's the being state, right? That's apart from all the roles we play in life, right? You can
yeah.
describe yourself on so many different levels, as a body, as a mind, as a feeling, as a concept. But the being state is in a way it is like a field of what I call the soul, and I'm describing myself as that soul piece that kind of transcends the human, but is not quite like one with God, where all the individuality disappears. So yes, and that being state is just often overlooked because we're always chasing for like a shiny thing or a glamorous thing or a carrot in front of our nose, another goal, another thing to do, another spiritual goal, perhaps, another financial goal or another child or whatever. It's like we're busy in this world, but the being state is something I've always been committed to relentlessly. We always felt like if I have that, I have everything I ever wanted. And being the love that I always wanted was always like my slogan. I was like, I am the love that I always wanted. I'm my own love romantic partner. Like I'm getting married to myself. If I can do that, I have no problems in this world because I found finally what I was always been looking for. And since I was 3 years old, I had this feeling of I'm looking for love. I'm looking like longing, the hard longing to come home to itself.
Mm.
And yeah, so I've always tried with the essential questions and never tried to get too carried away with what most people go for in life. No, I'm really here to do the essential thing, what's important to me. And I am proud of myself for not straying too far away from what I thought was the essence of, yeah, what life's all about.
And it's beautiful because, like I said, it's when you're finding the being inside of you, your love that you coming in is glowing from you inside out, not outside in.
Yeah,
And
very important distinction. That's a very important distinction. That distinction alone will set you free.
mm, when
Yeah.
you're giving love in a place of being, it's the love from coming from inside out, not what's received from the outside in. And it's a lot of people might call this confidence, the warrior part of you, the legend part of you, the legacy. People you are using all different parts of trying to explain the word being. And the one way I can honestly truly explain it is just the love that you give from inside out.
Hmm.
And how would you describe for other people, like, how the word being? Because for them, a lot of people have a lot of these questions. This is going to hopefully answer some of these questions that people are been asking for months or years, or maybe even right now, they're like, "Yeah, what do you mean by being? Like, what is this being movement? Like,
Yeah,
not in the movement, but just in general, you
right.
know?" Even if they read the book or they're still continuing to read the book, or and they're still questioning, "I don't get it."
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, really
how do you
good.
explain that to somebody?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And the easiest way to explain it in or demonstrate it or make it come closer is to withdraw, to extract, or to subtract what is not being. And so let's say Abel took the body away, took the mind away,
Mm,
took everything I own away, and took my life away, like my physical existence away. What would remain? And some people, when they have these near-death experiences where they
yeah.
are experiencing death on a physical level and their soul is in some ways separated from their body and they're experiencing this impersonality of consciousness and being, that's when really we come in touch again with the essence of who we are being. It's not the urgent matters of this human life. It's really what's underneath it all. And it's a state of peace, it's a state of love, it's a state of compassion. And it's a state of really knowing what's really important because usually at that
Mm,
place there's no time and space, so at that point you really are connected with essence, right? And if you can do that while you're still in the body and you have an active mind and you have all the stuff that we experience as a human, if you can still anchor yourself in the state of being while you're in this human experience, then some people call that awakened or some people call
yeah.
that enlightened. It's easy
Yeah.
to have this experience outside of your body or outside of the human experience, but I believe we come here to have a human experience and make the human experience holy in that sense, infuse it with our being state, so much so that those two realities almost become inseparable. And that's
Mhm.
what I've been working towards, and that's what I call embodiment. So it's
Yeah.
almost like the human experience sacred and holy.
And you said an important word. You remember what is the most important is stand still when you're in that higher level of state. There is no time. That it's just a time still, it's a time capsule. And in that moment in time, you really have the chance to slow your mind down, slow your spirit down, to really talk to yourself or talk to whoever you're talking to
Mhm.
about what is the most important thing in that time frame.
Yeah,
And that's when you really realize that your answers are going to be there. They're always there, but now it might be a vision or a spiritual awakening, or it might be you see your children or you see your grandma, things in light that you did not notice that was there before.
100%.
And I've had multiple out of body experiences, especially when comes to my children.
Mm,
And it's this weird interconnection that I have with all three of my kids, but specifically around Rohan. And it's that outer body experience where a lot of people ask me, they go, how are you so grounded?
mm,
Why are your kids your grounding mechanism when they're just running around with their heads chopped off everywhere? You
mm,
know, like, how is this possible?
mhm.
I said, because that's the possibility. It's the
Yeah.
creation of possibilities within my children that actually is what grounds me.
Mm,
'Cause I'm creating a place of possibilities that they don't even know or see yet,
mhm.
but in my greater being, in my state of being, I'm able to see outside my body what is it that they may or may not be doing in
Mm,
5 years, 10 years, and it's just peace. That's
yes.
all I see is peace. I don't
Right.
see detail.
Mhm.
I don't know detail. So, "Do you know what's gonna happen?" I said, "No, I never know."
Mm,
But I can have these multiple rays of outer state beings. Like I had one when me and you spoke. I was like, wow, this is very surreal. Like it felt
mm,
calming. And I
mm.
know me and you spoke about that,
Yeah.
but it's that motion of that hypersensitivity, or people call themselves hypersensitive people,
Yeah.
and they're able to be enlightened multiple times when they're in their own vessel.
Mm,
And I really do believe everybody has that power. People just don't know how to, they choose not to do it. Or they choose, they're
mhm.
like, oh, freaking out. Okay, hold on. That fight or flight, let me just stay right here.
Yeah, right. Mhm.
I don't want to go there. And that's okay too.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
beautiful that you can connect so deeply with the essence of other people's beings, and children are often a very sacred offering for us to have a very sacred communion and sacred relationship with another person's soul. It's like,
Mhm.
wow. And then to be able to zoom out like you do, can see the big picture and not freak out and stay grounded because you can see a bigger unfolding, not just what's happening right now, but you see it embedded into a diffuser sort of time and space picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And that's what makes parents trustworthy too, because when we can see the big picture, then we can feel safe and we can feel that we deserve trust and we can hold the space that most people can't hold. Those things are underrated, I believe. The space we hold for it to be safe, for it to be connected, and for it to create possibility, that is huge. And it's all invisible. That's not something you can measure. It's all our own inner magic that we have been inherently born with that we can tap into. And that's what you're doing. And that's amazing.
And that's where a lot of people think. They go, sorry, my dog decided to hang
Yeah.
out with us.
Well, yeah.
It's the world of possibilities. And when we're always, and I know Steve talks about this a lot, when we're consciously creating all the time, right? It's
Hmm.
like the world, how I explain to people, it's we forget as children when we're at 4 or 5 years old. My children are very young. They do imagination play all the time. Cops
Hmm.
and robbers. Yesterday they were at the barber shop, and then they ended up in a volcano. I don't know where the story was going in their minds.
Hmm.
I couldn't follow from the barber shop to a volcano, but it's like that creativity of their level
Hmm.
and the possibilities of them going. I asked them, I said, where did it go from a barbershop to a volcano?
Hmm.
And they're just like, no, we just decided that we were gonna play Floor is Lava. We were in the barbershop and that the floor is coming up and we're just playing Floor is Lava. And I
Mm.
was like, okay. And now we're at that stage where everyone has to put Floor is Lava. We all have to jump off the floors,
Mm.
turn it into a game. So I have to warn people. I'm like, yeah, if they start counting down, like that's a real thing in our house right now. Jump off, get your
Yeah.
feet off the ground somehow. And it's that world of possibilities.
Mm.
And as adults, giving yourself permission to go back to that childhood freedom that you
Mm.
spoke about earlier
Mm.
and not living in that box. So then you're able to fully expand because
Mm.
expansion is just coming from a world full of imagination.
Mm.
You just
Yeah.
have to accept it.
Yeah, for sure. Be divinely inspired by the inner child. Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
without that enthusiasm, without that fluidity, without that freedom, there's just not a lot of creativity that's going to happen. Mhm.
and so when people ask for that place of being, then people ask me, they go, oh, should I go do imaginary play or something again?
Mhm.
All I'm saying is that when you take a step back and you look at that bigger picture without the emotions, because in that being state, time, emotions, all that goes away. All you're looking at is the reality of what is in front of you.
Mhm.
And it's hard for people to phantom, and I get that. And that's why it's really appreciated for you to come on and explain what your version is because a lot of people have these same questions. But
Mhm.
how do I do that?
Mhm.
Like, how do I do this? So
Mhm.
how do you explain to people like the word with when they ask that, like how? How do I go into this place of being that you and Bina are talking about? That'd be
Mhm.
great if I could do this, but I just can't get there.
Yeah, I think that's not the right question to ask right away, because before
Mm,
you ask the how, you have to ask why. And do I
mm,
really want it? Because that's really where most people are trying to cheat. Because most people
mm,
actually don't want love, most people don't want peace, and most people don't want freedom. So, and I know that sounds
mm.
maybe harsh. Why most people don't experience it is because they've not made it a priority. So, question number one is, do you really want it? Because if you really want it, how is not important. If you want it bad enough, you
You'll
will
show up.
you have it, you
You'll
collapse
show up.
all the house. You collapse all the thousand ways how to get to God. It's just you need to have a willingness and a devotion that supersedes all the other things in life. Right? So it's cheating when people say, how? It's like a little child, like just saying, how do I get approval from somebody? Or how do I get the carrot that's dangling in front of me? That's the wrong question to ask.
But why is the sky blue? Why?
I know, it's all hypothetical. Yeah.
And I'm happy you stated this is because then now in adulthood, we stop asking the questions why,
Hmm.
and we only want to know the hows.
Hmm.
But if we go back to our childhood, we go back to why and do I want it? Do I want to see it? Do I
Yeah.
want to feel it? And as a child, I always ask this to my kids. They go, but why is that? I'm like, do you want to touch it? No, thank you.
Hmm.
Okay. If you don't touch it, then you don't know if it's ugly. If you don't know it's gooey, you're not going to know what it even feels like.
Hmm.
And then they're like, but why? I said, because you're asking me all these questions.
Yeah,
It's just like you're the only one that's gonna be able to answer it by touching something or feeling something or comes in. You have to want it and you have to know your why.
for sure. I mean, those two things, it's like you put an address into a GPS system. Right? So
Mm,
with like without putting it in there and you just try to drive around, it's just like, oh, you never get there. So you gotta put it in there and you have to make it a priority in your life. And then you'll automatically reconnect with that because it's not something you have to get to, you're already there. You just have to learn how to zoom out enough to arrive there again in your own awareness.
mm.
Most people have a
Oh,
180 on reality. It's like it's a 180-degree reverse view on how to get what they want spiritually speaking, because they see it from an ego point of view where you have to get something, but it's actually what stands in the way that you have to let go of, right? So arrive at a being state. And that's a really sneaky one.
yeah. Can you expand a little more on that? Because that does, I can see myself even being a little confused with that.
Yeah,
Explain
like
that one a little bit.
same like with an analogy, like the carrot in front of you, right? This is
Hmm.
like you know, the ego and the spiritual ego, the The spiritual ego is just a nicer version of an ego, all right? So it's just dressed up more beautifully and it has maybe smells a little better or maybe looks a little better, but at the end of the day, it still operates on the same machinery. Just because you have a spiritual carrot doesn't make it not a carrot. It's still a carrot. You try to chase something, you always put distance between yourself and what you want, okay? So by creating distance, you're actually keeping things away from yourself. So it's really about overcoming distance and not creating separation between you and what you want. So if you want something spiritual, then you create a distance between you and what you want spiritually speaking, and you will play a cat and mouse game and you'll read hundreds of books and you'll distract yourself with all kinds of techniques and you need to know everything in order to become enlightened. And by the time you're 79, you're still doing the same thing and you have not found out
Yeah.
your being because you've been a little kid in a candy shop with spiritual stuff. So you have to be honest with yourself and really reverse engineer this whole thing a little bit, because if you do the 180 thing, like trying to get somewhere, then you're going to be chasing things for a very long time. It's about slowing down, it's about letting go, it's about eliminating things from your life, not adding a lot of
Right.
stuff to yourself because you're already complete.
And that's beautifully said because it's like so many people think it's the opposite. Like when you're giving the analogy of the carrot in front of you and you're talking about the distance
Yeah.
between you and the carrot and everyone's chasing this carrot,
Yeah.
right?
100%.
It's they're not just reaching just for the carrot because they put that distance between them and they want to reach it and they want to get to this goal or this end goal or
Hmm.
whatever they want to decide to do in life, right?
Yeah.
But it reminds me of the dog races when they put the wiener in front of them and they see the dogs running around and who wins, who chases the hot dog the fastest, right? Reminds me of that in so many levels.
Yeah.
And when you're chasing a soul or you're chasing your spiritual, like you're
Hmm.
right, you're always going to be chasing it if you have that distance in front of you.
Hmm. The funny thing is, you're going to feel that in your body whenever you create the distance between you and yourself, whether it's money or sex or relationships or whatever it is that you want, or spiritual enlightenment. You're always going to feel this sort of disconnect inside of yourself. And it feels like, yeah, something's not right in there. There's a part in your body that almost is a fine-tuned antenna, like a tuning fork of some kind. And it doesn't feel right to be chasing shit. It's
Yeah.
like, it's just, it
Yeah.
doesn't, there's something off about that approach. Right. The being state is already complete. So it's more about softening into that, right? Rather than going
Right.
after something. And so it's you have to learn how to work with that because it can be very subtle sometimes.
Yeah. And it
Process.
didn't realize it until what you're talking about, until you mentioned it. It didn't even come into my own formation of sometimes when people are scared to take the next leap, whether it's in business, spiritual world, financial world, sex, partners, whatever it is that they want to create. It's just in creation world in general.
Yeah.
It's if you're dangling that carrot in front of you, do you want it? Do you want it? You're gonna get a little closer, come a little closer,
Yeah.
And it's then it goes back to the question you asked earlier. How bad do you want it?
Yeah.
And
For
if you go,
sure.
yes, I want it, then the distance have just you just eliminated the distance.
Yeah. It's a little bit like the marshmallow experiment with the kids that they do. Have you ever heard of that marshmallow
Yeah,
experiment?
my
Yeah.
kids failed miserably.
If you're really like attached to having the marshmallow right there and then, you're not going to get there because you have to be willing to suspend that addictive drive that runs us all. We're all addicted to our own neurochemistry. We're all addicted to the next dopamine hit. Just drip me a little bit more morphine into my brain. We're all juiced up to the max with addictions. Most people are. So if you're really spiritually devoted, you have to wean yourself off of every
Yeah.
attachment that you have because it's going to put that distance between you and the thing
Mhm.
that you want, right? So it requires trust, patience, and a real commitment.
It's an action. And people still think that they're committed, but when you're talking about this level of commitment, that's
Hmm.
a whole other level of commitment because that's spiritual, it's emotional, it's physical, it's tactile. You're seeing the marshmallow, you can't touch it.
Yes,
No. And it's
absolutely.
that craving of that dopamine hit that we want, that people
Hmm.
are looking for. And how do you tell somebody that states they're committed, but then in reality, they're really not? They're still looking for that dopamine hit. They're still looking for
Hmm.
that next big level. They're still looking for that next big thing, or they're waiting financially. Oh, this is going to come, or this is going to happen. I'm committed to the process, but then in reality, they're really not because they want
Hmm.
that dopamine hit.
By the fruits you shall know them. Everybody's life is really the portray of how organized they are on the inside and how committed they are to that being state. Like nothing lies. Behavior doesn't lie. Words don't lie. Everything's visible, really, to the person who's intuitive and spiritually open. Yeah, it's fair and honest. So if somebody says I'm committed and their life shows to be that they're not, then just show them those two pictures. This is what it is that we're talking about. This is who you're being, and then how is that? How does that feel when we put those two things together? Most people are like, ah, I want to throw up. Like, I don't like it. Like, I have no idea. That's where the shadow work comes in. Like, you have to give people also a view of their shadow. You show them what they're capable of being potentially, like their beautiful state, and you can show them where they're at and where it's not so beautiful. Compassion too, right? This is not easy. Like, being a human is incredibly difficult. It's very
Yeah.
seductive to be in this plane of reality. So compassion, like I had to learn to be extremely compassionate with myself because my addictions were seemingly never ending, to be honest with you. And it seemed like old habits die hard. Because this is not just, I'm not just talking about me, personal Daniel, whatever. Just like ego is inherited. It's millennia old. Okay. It had like a millennia of time to become this structure now that we're all dealing with on the inside. So to really transcend that, you have to become very committed and smart within yourself. It's not something you can do in a workshop, a weekend workshop.
No, and that's what I want people to hear is that this place of being, some people take a lifetime to find.
Yeah.
Some people takes a weekend. Some people don't realize that they're in a being state. Like I actually, before I didn't even know I was in it until the book was introduced to me. It's actually until I met Steve Hardison. And then once I started learning what this being was and what all these pops up, and everyone's like, how did you get here so fast? And I was like, because I was always here. I just
Mm.
didn't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why now when people are reading the book and they're like, please teach me everything. And I'm like, I don't know what I don't know,
Yeah.
but I've already been in a place that I just now understand that this is the world of being in my world. But this is the being in my world, which is not going to be the being in your world. I don't know what that's going to look like for you, but that's something
Mm-hmm.
you need to figure out. And the shadow experience that you're
Yeah.
talking about, it's very, some people can do it, and
Mm-hmm.
some people will be like, yep, nope, I'm done.
Absolutely. That's where the rubber hits the road.
And
That's why Steve didn't want to write the book in the first place, is because being is not an action. Being is not a habit. Being is not like something you can do or explain. Being is an impersonal state of awareness that is a priori, meaning like prior to all the other things in life. So it's a field of consciousness. So you
yeah,
didn't want to write the book and you didn't want to do all the public sharing in that way is because you felt like that's not going to lead people to really being, because being is ineffable. It's something you get to experience. It's an inside thing, like what you said earlier. But he changed his mind on that, luckily, and then we got to experience the book, right? So yes,
which is a blessing within itself,
yeah.
because if people want to understand it and it comes in, then read the book. Everything, and everyone's, oh, I can't afford his coaching. I can't do this. I'm like, you
Hmm.
do realize you get Steve Hardison in the book.
Hmm.
Like his whole being, his whole soul,
Yeah.
when you read it about you, you are being coached by him.
Hmm. 100%.
Because it's an amazing, it's just literally him on paper.
Hmm.
How do I do this? Where do I go? How do I call it the word vomit?
Hmm.
You know? I was like, because you haven't slowed yourself down
Hmm.
to hear the in between pauses, because what you're not listening, the active listening of what we're trying to say. All the answers are right there in front of you. You
Hmm.
just have to be able to see it.
So again, it's about not eating the marshmallow right away.
Even though my kids epically failed.
It's a predictor of long-term success. If you can delay gratification, and it's the same thing. When I find being, you really have to not jump for the next juicy seduction that's coming your way. You have to slow down, relax, and then it opens up. Yeah, there it is. Oh
There it
God.
is.
Right, there it is.
And I'm so happy you said that, because it's always people are, again, it's the marshmallow. Like I know my kids epically failed, but it's also the time of, okay, I know where they are at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can change that. I can change that behavior of what is it, their instant gratification that they're needing in that moment. Were they
Mm-hmm.
hungry? Did they just want something? Was their sugars low that comes in? There's so many different factors that come into place with that. Again, zooming out to see what the picture is,
Yeah.
but then slowing yourself down to the reality of what the reality is. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a failure as a mother. It's just what they're doing. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
understand the assignment. They just said there was marshmallows in front of me. I put the timer on and I walked out because you walk out of the room and they were just like, why did my mom walk away? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
it is the way your brain is developed as a child. So I'm not saying if you were an impulsive kid, you are an impulse as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you were a whiner as a kid, you're a whiner as an adult. I'm not stating like consciously that one and the other,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a way to develop and it's a way of you were this yesterday, but I don't need to be that today.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Luckily, this all can be trained. Kids have until they're 24 or 25 to add another layer of insulation on their forebrain to just put stop signs up in their brain to not be impulsive. But even then, after 24, you need just devote yourself to your practice. You can build layer upon layer of insulation to shield yourself from the barrage of temptation that's coming at us from all angles. So it's thank God we have the tools available that we have now with
Mm,
everything we are graced with. Like we swim in a sea of wealth. Right now, it's really about picking and choosing the things that really make the biggest difference in your life.
mhm.
And that's really a challenge because the spiritual marketplace is so huge. And even the
Yeah.
distraction in that can be overwhelming sometimes. So, yeah.
What do you tell to somebody that is looking for a spiritual guide,
Mhm.
but because there's a lot of noise around it, how do they find the best one for themselves? And what do you offer so people want to go? They can explain to what you're offering. And how do you get rid of the noise? Because there is a lot of clatter. Do this,
Mhm.
don't do that, go here, do that, do this, blah, blah, blah. Like
Yeah.
there's just a lot of noise around it,
Hmm. Yeah.
you know?
Well, I think there's 8 billion people on this planet, and everybody's here to learn a different lesson. Some of us learn a very similar one, and maybe some of us learn the same one, but it really depends where you want to go. So some people are here for entertainment. Some people want to have just add a little enrichment to their life. Some people want to have a new experience of some kind. And not everybody's here for real awakening and real enlightenment. So we have to ask yourself, okay, what does the person want? Where do they want to go? Depending on where you
Mhm.
want to go, you want to read different books, you want to put yourself into different spheres of influence. Some people are committed to unconditional love, forgiveness. Then you're very good reading books on how to forgive and let go and love. And there's just so many different avenues, even within spirituality. So it's not a question I can answer just for everybody. So I
Yeah,
can only tell you from my own personal experience that
yeah,
I was always very interested in how reality works and what truth is and what love is and what beauty is. So the three qualities I'm embodying. And I wasn't giving up and I looked everywhere. I read every tradition, every wisdom tradition, every religion, every spiritual practice, studied psychology for 10 years. Like I
yeah,
mentored with somebody at all times since I was 28 years old, but it was half of my paycheck into personal development and learning
yeah.
about myself. So it's like a relentless pursuit of wanting to know what's going on in this reality and how can I help myself and how can I help the people around me. For me, a big teaching that made a huge difference was the teaching of David Hawkins, because when I read his book, Power versus Force, when I was 24 years old, I was at this place where I consumed a lot of spiritual information. And then I read his book and I felt like, oh, this is a lot simpler than I thought it was. So
Yeah.
I eliminated half of my library after reading that book. I burned half of it because I felt like I don't need to know all this. Like I really have to just know a few things. And then I just have to use those things over and over again. So that's what commitment is to me on a spiritual path. You're not trying
Mhm.
to accumulate all this information, which is great too. Some people need to accumulate a lot of information, and I do have accumulated a lot of information too. But more importantly is the commitment and the discipline and the devotion to the path. Okay, so like a razor blade, right? And so that's what made a huge difference for me. And without my mentors that I've had, and Steve Hardison being one of them, I've been able to
Right.
coach him for 3 years, luckily. Very fortunate. I've had amazing teachers on my path that guided me, and everybody revealed a certain aspect of me back to me. And then I could see myself as my greater self little by little. And that is the biggest gift that I've ever been given. So it's like will take me for the rest of my life to bring all of that together and to share it with the world because it's just such a beautiful gift that I've been given and I will honor it for the rest of my life. So if you are on a spiritual path, you need to trust your heart and your heart will tell you which person or teacher or mentor that vibes with you the best and who will be appropriate for your phase that you're in your journey. And I've been through various phases in my journey. There was this phase and there was that
Mhm.
phase and that phase. And depending on where I was at, I needed different levels of guidance. But I truly believe that this is not a world where we should do things on our own. I think that thing is either phased out from the past, like this maybe worked in the past, but doesn't work anymore. I do believe we're social beings wired for connection and I think putting yourself in the influence in the sphere of people who know more than you do and who have something that you want is extremely important. That's why I moved to America when I was 24 years old because I knew there were people here that I wanted to learn from, and I didn't have that available where I
Right.
was at in Austria at the time. So
Yeah.
personal mentorship is probably more important than a university degree, in my opinion. But without personal mentorship is like you're lost because schools and universities don't teach you necessarily what truth is and what love is and what beauty is, if that's what you want to know. Yeah.
And it's the truth. I'm educated and I'm a nurse. I've been a bedside nurse for 18 years before I left. And it is the truth. There's a lot of stuff I learned
Mhm.
that was very tactical in nursing and how to save your life and how to do things, right? The
Mhm.
embodiment comes in. But then what I didn't learn in school was the truth, the beauty, the relationships, the other stuff that it's like, this is great for a degree and to save the world. And I love being a nurse and being in that
Mhm.
realm. But then I feel so stupid everywhere else because I don't know how to do my finances. I didn't know how to do this. I don't know how to have a healthy relationship. I'm blessed to be in a healthy relationship right now. I've always stated this and I state this all the time. My husband's my rock.
Yeah.
But I would not have I had to go through all these failed relationships in
Mhm.
order to get to him, and
Yeah.
the minute I got to him, it was like, "Oh, where were you my entire life?" Which I do believe he is my true soulmate. And it's that again, that outer body experience that I had with my husband, it was this like we knew from the first 24 hours, we were like, we are meant to be together.
Mhm.
But they don't teach you that in education. They don't teach you like, oh, whatever this is how you communicate effectively. It's something you're not going to learn through a book. It's only going to be learned in that state of being when like just like me and my husband. Like
There
we
you
would
go.
have never met if I said yes to these other men in my life.
Mhm.
And because I kept saying no, and the same thing with the power of business or in the power of being, the minute you say no to things you're supposed to say no to, the thing
Mhm.
that's supposed to be there for you at the very end will show up at its perfect time.
Yes. 100%. Exactly. Education gives you a skeleton. You have to put the meat on the skeleton.
Yeah.
Education will give you the outside in knowledge that you need to know, but you need to develop the inside out knowledge that you need in order to make this a wholesome experience as a nurse
Mhm.
or as a coach or anything. So it's really like you have to fill the gaps. And that's what distinguishes average from possibly high performer or whatever you want to call it, because to the degree that you can fill in the gaps with your own essence and infuse it with your own soul, that's how you make yourself into your own masterpiece.
Mhm. Yeah, that's beautifully stated. You have to know the ins and outs of you first.
Mhm.
And again, those are things that you're correct. We don't learn those ins and outs in an education system.
Mm.
Those
No,
come from experiences, from trial and error, from somebody guiding you in a movement, challenging you in a good way, where they sit down with you and they challenge you with, here's two paths. Which one do you want to choose? There's no
100%.
right, wrong, good, or bad,
Yeah.
but I'm going to walk with you here. Okay, you're scared. All right, I'll walk with you.
Okay,
That's okay.
everything that I didn't have when I grew up, like I said earlier, when I was 17 or 24, is who I am now. Like I had to create myself as that. And
Mhm.
it took me a lot of time and a lot of money to be at that place, right? So now I'm here as an offering for the 17-year-old out there, or for the 24-year-old out there that I used to be, I'm now an offering to help
Yeah.
hold somebody's hand and to walk somebody home with me. So that's really why I'm here. This is my purpose in this life. It's okay.
Mhm.
I'm your big brother or whatever you want to call me, or your uncle or whatever, and I'm here to help. I'm available. You don't have to do all the trials and errors that I did. You might have to do your own, but I think it'll be a lot easier to have a kind of like an example.
That's beautiful. And yeah, you have that, you are that. That is who you are. Yeah, and even on our first conversation, that's just who you were. You were just that person to enlighten another conversation to making me feel, and we both said the same thing. We just both felt like home.
Hmm. How beautiful is that?
It's like a full circle.
What more can you want and feel like safe and full of trust and feeling like you're home within yourself with the people you're with, and reality is kind, much kinder than you believed it to be, because reality sometimes can seem really harsh. But the more you come home to yourself, the more reality around you seems to be actually really kind. And not always, but a lot more than it used to be, is my experience.
Mhm.
So, and that's like heals my childhood wounds in a way, because I always felt like this is a scary world. And now the more healing work I do on myself, it's almost like I'm healing the inner child in a way that is afraid that this world is an unsafe place. And I'm not saying the world is a safe place, but my experience of the world is becoming increasingly safe because I'm safe
Right.
with myself.
Right.
And yes, and I'm not creating realities that are unsafe for me anymore. I know where to say yes and no. I know when to withdraw from situations that are unhealthy. I know when I'm not making a difference. I'm not spending a lot of time there. I just know how to move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to even witness. And I'm so honored for you to even have this conversation with me and for me to witness you. Virtual hug. Virtual hug.
There you
Um,
go.
a
Virtual
virtual
one.
hug here, hun.
So here's to coming home to yourself. Here's
Yeah.
to celebrating life with the people that you love.
And I hope our connection grows and grows because you feel like home. And I said this to you before. And anyone else that needs to feel like home or wants to feel like home, or they're searching for that feeling of wanting to go home, reach out to us. Reach out to Daniel. He's an amazing guy. He's not as hard as people think he is to get a hold of. He does respond. Some people may have been like, he's really hard to get a hold of.
Maybe you weren't persistent enough. That's the problem. Yeah.
And it's whatever it is. It's the creating of the possibilities. Again, going back to what Daniel was saying, what I was saying previously, is that if you want it, you need to create it.
Hmm.
You can't wait for the carrot to come to you. You
Yeah.
just have to go grab it.
Yeah, you have to see it complete within yourself, and you have to have the energetic resonance to have a consciousness expanding conversation with somebody. If there's a huge potential there for a consciousness expanding conversation, it's very likely to happen. So it really depends.
Yeah.
So two substances that come together, they have to make beautiful music together, or they have to create a chemical reaction that makes a beautiful molecule. And that's always the intention, that our conversation will uplift the people that are listening to it.
Mm-hmm. And that's the beauty that I want to remind the viewers that are listening to this is that you create your harmony. You're creating this magical connection that comes from you.
Hmm.
And it's how you want it. And when people were asking from a place of being, I'm blessed to have you guys all hear from Daniel Harner himself from the book of being, with how he created himself from previously to where he is now. And it's a beautiful story. And I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed to hear it. And I'm blessed that the entire world gets to hear it because there's a lot of questions out there. Who is Daniel Harner? And I was like, I don't know. I'm going to ask him.
It's just a little tiny, like 3% of my story. So yeah,
Right.
but hopefully
Yeah.
that will be enough to move some hearts and change some minds.
Mm. Yeah, and I know in our conversation we had a very deeper conversation. So I do know some
Mm.
of the challenges and stuff that we did and we shared. And I think our conversation was like 2 or 3 hours. It was a beautiful conversation. And your journey of where you were to where you are now is just beautiful.
Mm.
And
Big
many
step.
people, everyone needs to hear it, but everyone needs to feel it.
Mm.
And
more
I'm a
important.
big believer in that everyone needs to experience Daniel Harner in his true essence, whether it's by Zoom, whether it's just through this channel,
Mm,
whether it comes in, because you are a true beauty and
mm.
you are who you are. And it's just a blessing and honor to see.
Oh,
Thank you.
received.